Good morning, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started so we can keep ourselves running on time. We have an exciting and packed agenda today. I just wanted to say a few opening words. On behalf of the UCLA American Indian Studies Center, I really want to welcome you here to UCLA and to today's event, a presentation and critical commentary on the Indian Law and Order Commission's recently released in-depth report and recommendation on criminal justice in Indian country, a roadmap for making Native America safer. My name is Angela Riley. I'm a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation of Oklahoma. I am the director of the UCLA American Indian Studies Center and a member of the Faculty of Law here at the law school, and I also co-direct the Native Nations Law and Policy Center here at UCLA. I want to take a moment at the outset to recognize the indigenous peoples of this territory and the many Indian nations across the Southern California region. The American Indian Studies Center is delighted to serve as the principal sponsor of this event, which marks an important site of collaboration between the Center and the Indian Law and Order Commission, an independent national advisory commission created in 2010 by the Tribal Law and Order Act. Our collaborative relationship grew initially out of the long-standing reputation that UCLA developed as being a leader in tribal and Indian law, spearheaded and brought to national prominence over decades by Professor Carol Goldberg, who now serves as Vice Chancellor for Academic Personnel here at UCLA and who was appointed to the commission by President Barack Obama in 2011. Shortly thereafter, the Center and the Commission jointly created Partners for Justice, Institute for Criminal Law in Indian Country, a research initiative primarily designed to provide research support to the Commission during its probably exhaustive years, but during its years of exhaustive information gathering on the state of criminal justice in Indian Country. And as part of our ongoing partnership with the Commission, the American Indian Studies Center Library here at UCLA will become the sole repository for ILOC materials once the Commission completes its work at the end of this month. The Commission's full report is available in PDF on our website, and hopefully you've all received a copy of it here today as well. So I would like to thank the commissioners very much and express my gratitude to them for their years of service and for traveling to UCLA to share their findings with us in this public forum. It has been our privilege to support such an esteemed and highly respected and tirelessly committed group engaged in work of such great significance to Indian communities all across the United States. We especially thank the Commission's chair, Troy Ide, for his brilliant and fearless leadership, and the outstanding guest commentators that have joined us from all across the United States, and we look forward to hearing their insights today. The event would not be possible without the generous funding provided by the Department of Justice, UCLA Native Nations, and the research funds of the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Personnel. And I want to take a moment to give a particular thanks and a special thanks to the entire staff of the UCLA American Indian Studies Center, who handled all of the logistics and planning for today's event. Thank you. As you can see, our agenda is replete with coordinated discussions focused on bringing to the fore the Commission's findings and recommendations, complemented by insights from some of the field's leading experts. And then each panel will have a Q&A session at the end as well. We look forward to this dialogue with great anticipation, and we're delighted that you could be a part of it. As you may know, this symposium is part of a year-long series of events and speakers hosted by the American Indian Studies Center, focusing on the theme of good Native governance. We're also pleased to announce that the culmination of this series is our Good Native Governance Conference, which takes place here at UCLA at the School of Law on March 6th and 7th, where we will showcase innovative research in law, education, and economic development, and also hold panels on relevant California-specific topics, including gaming, constitutional revitalization, and cultural resource protection. And you are all welcome at that event as well. This spring, UCLA will be kicking off its centennial campaign to secure funding to continue to fund the work of centers like ours, and we thank you in advance for any support that you give of our continued and important work. So before I introduce our next speaker, I ask that we all take a collective moment just to take a look around the room and to really take in this momentous occasion, a rare point in time when we can all come together in this place to discuss issues that are of such great practical and personal importance to us all. I think it's fitting that we're engaging these issues here at UCLA and in Southern California, home to numerous Indian nations whose particular histories and contemporary circumstances were and continue to be so profoundly shaped by historical, legal, and political contestations over the settlement of the American West. It is now my pleasure to introduce Troy Ide, Chairman of the Indian Law and Order Commission. He was nominated by President George Bush to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Colorado from 2006 to 2009, where he helped develop a training program to deputize tribal officers to enforce federal laws in Indian country. He was appointed to the commission by U.S. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and unanimously selected by his fellow members to chair this commission. He's now a shareholder in the Denver office of Greenberg Traurig, where he founded and is co-chair of the American Indian Law Practice Group. He's a graduate of Stanford University and received his JD from Chicago Law School. So please join me in welcoming Chairman Ide to kick off today's event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Riley, and thank you for all your amazing leadership and always being willing to step up on the hard issues and tell the truth. You're an inspiration. We appreciate it very much. I'd like to start with a prayer, if I may, and I'd ask you to rise. And with all apologies to my friend and colleague, Commissioner Ellis, who is Diné. I'm not a native person, and I was adopted ceremonially in the Navajo Nation 10 years ago. I'm a Sheehy clan, Salt clan. And there's a prayer that I think is very appropriate for a setting like this. It's the prayer when you've been up through a ceremony all night and the sun is just going to start to rise. They don't practice Greenwich Mean Time at Navajo. The day actually starts when the sun comes up. And that's the beginning. So in the prayer, it's a very brief prayer. And it goes, Yate ta yizyehe akyehe Naditsa Shukhujo. And it means, Yate is behold the universe. It's how you greet someone, but it really means behold the universe. Ta yizye. Thank you so much. Naditsa, I am reborn. This day I am reborn. Shukhujo, I'm very glad. So with that, I say amen, and I ask you to be seated. And just to remember why it is that we're here. You know, we're trying to cross cultural lines, political lines, all the differences, and I have to point out also jurisdictional lines to address these issues, because that's what we must do. And just very briefly, I want to add my thanks to what Professor Riley has said. I want to thank very much those who provided funding for us to be here today. And that is the UCLA American Indian Studies Center and the whole team that made this possible. Thank you so much for doing this. And from the very beginning, helping us out. We're just very grateful that you did this. We really needed the help too. We didn't get funded by Congress for a whole year. The money was held up. So UCLA came to our aid at a critical time, and it's been tremendously beneficial to this process. The UCLA School of Law's Native Nations Law and Policy Center. I want to thank Professor Dwayne Champagne, who also, by the way, helped us enormously in the editing process of the report as we were getting the report put together. And I want to thank the research fund of the Vice Chancellor, Academic and Personnel. That would be Vice Chancellor Goldberg, to those of you who may know her. And Carol, thank you so much for all the support of your office. And again, from the very beginning, you stepped up, and it made all the difference. And I want to thank again the American Indian Studies Center for putting this together and sponsoring it in this beautiful place in UCLA. I just want to say very briefly that we're here because we're committed that individuals can make a difference and that the institutions around us could serve us well. They may not be these particular legacy institutions that afflict so much of Indian country. And it's a roadmap. I'm so pleased that we have scholars of the stature of a Matthew Fletcher, for example, who reached out to us at the very beginning. Professor Fletcher said, you know, we're going to have a conference that he puts together, the Indigenous Law Conference that he has at Michigan State University College of Law, and he stepped up and he had us come out and took us seriously. So much of what happens in the academy is that when you take us seriously and you question and challenge what those of us who are just trying to do the best we can as private citizens are trying to do, it raises the stature and the profile, and people pay attention to us because you're taking us seriously. And we're very grateful to all the great scholars who are here today. And I won't name everyone, but I'm very pleased to have a chance to be part of all this. And we think these institutions can be better, but this is a roadmap. There could be other roadmaps too. We feel pretty strongly that this is a good place to start. And so we're excited to get into some of these issues. I'm here because really of one tribal member I think about. I could think of really thousands, but in my practice as a lawyer in Colorado, we had a case that happened in 2011 in Toyac, which is the capital of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, which I've represented as a special counsel. And before that, I was a federal prosecutor serving that Indian nation. And was a sexual assault victim. And I'll just lay it out very, very briefly. She showed up in the hospital in Cortez, Colorado. She got there by a relative's car and was dropped off at that hospital in Cortez. She did not report that crime to the police. She was there for a long time before the hospital, as has been publicly reported, told her that they didn't serve Indians and they wouldn't treat them. She had to go to IHS. So in violation, of course, of federal law, after many hours, somebody came back to the hospital and picked her up. And she ended up going back to the very same home in Toyac where she was victimized. She was re-victimized while she was there. She eventually made it about a day and a half later to the IHS Indian Health Service Hospital in Shiprock, New Mexico. She had been not provided any medical care during that entire time. And but for the efforts of a Department of Social Services staff person for the Ute Mountain Ute tribe who got wind of this and literally got into her car about an hour away and just drove out there to try to take charge of the situation, do something, she wouldn't even have gotten down to Shiprock for any kind of treatment. And you know, you can just think about that story and think about why we're here. She didn't report the crime. Why didn't she report it? Well, it might have been because at the time, the reservation, which is the size of Rhode Island, was only served by 5 or 6 police officers total. That it's a federal Office of Justice Services, Bureau of Indian Affairs department that, while well-intentioned and has some good people, has not been terribly accountable to that community or very well supported. And has had, at that time, was having a rotating police chief every 30 to 45 days. A new police chief would show up and start from scratch from some other part of the country. She didn't report the crime. There wasn't any kind of a network of services, wraparound services to help her. And then just up the road, I mean, we're talking, I don't know how many of you have been to this place, but Cortez is a 20-minute drive. Just up the road, it's like the Maginot Line. There's the hospital, Southwest Memorial Hospital, telling a Native woman that she cannot get medical care when she's just been raped and turning her away. They had to think about it. It wasn't some intake error. It turned out it was a physician who actually came out and talked to her and said, you have to go to Shiprock. We're not going to treat you. Subsequently, the state of Colorado, for the very first time ever, did a civil rights investigation involving an Indian tribe. There was such outrage when we finally were able to document this. But I will point out that the tribal council had told us that for the previous at least 20 years, they kept hearing the same thing from tribal citizens. And what was different about this was that we finally were able to document a case. We actually had something that the officials in state governments would believe had actually happened. They kept saying this didn't actually happen, these things don't occur. But we finally had a case that we could talk about. And so you go through this chain, and all I'd say again is, number one, we're better than this as a people. It doesn't matter whether it's hard, we just have to try. We can, the people in this room have a multiplier effect in what you do every day. We can change this debate, and we will, because no American citizen who hears that story will be unmoved, or the thousands of other stories we could tell. The other thing is that we have institutions we can draw strength from. Local control, self-government, respect that people will follow the law if they're respected to make decisions and their governments are respected. So it's a great honor to be here. I'm excited about this work that you're doing. I want to say it at the outset. People constantly ask the commissioners, who I want to thank again and again for their work over the last 3.5 years. What happens next to this report? And the answer is, frankly, up to all of us in this room. I mean, what happens next is, are we willing to push forward and continue to say these things and work with others to make change? Or are we going to go back to our homes and turn away and not do what we know we have to do to make this a better country? So I'm very convinced and I'm very heartened that with Professor Riley and putting a conference together like this to take this process so seriously, and your being here, that with your help that we can really achieve great things. And we saw with the Violence Against Women Act that back in 2007, I remember so vividly, there was a idea of, we'll have a pilot project to extend criminal jurisdiction over non-Indians domestic violence cases. It actually made it in a draft of Senator Dorgan's first Tribal Law and Order Act bill in 2007. It was stripped out before it got to a hearing because it was deemed to be so controversial. And I remember it vividly because at the time I had tried to testify about it and the administration had invoked executive privilege, and that was the end of my attempt to try to speak up for this. But you know what happened was in 2013, VAWA passed, right? And thanks to the people in this room and thousands of other people, it passed. And I remember vividly in 2007 people saying it would never pass. It would not happen in our lifetimes. And so when you take these recommendations, I know that we have a chance if we keep working at it. And I'll close with that thought. A lot of you know Charles Wilkinson, one of the deans of our profession, professor, University of Colorado School of Law. And Charles says every 7 years, if you work at it in Indian law, something good happens. If you push for 7 years, and he thinks it's 7. I don't know where it gets to 7, but for him it's been 7. I hope it's not as long as 7. But he says if you just push on an idea, it'll happen. And he cited the whole VAWA example, but also in his own career. I think that if we just keep working away and don't get discouraged and stick together, that we'll be able to turn this system around. And it starts by actually believing and feeling that the people the system is supposed to serve are in charge of it. They need to be respected. And the mainstream society, whatever that means, needs to accept that truth is not necessarily defined by mainstream and majority. Truth is defined by adherence to the principles and the values that we all aspire to and cherish. So, Professor Riley, thank you, and thank you, UCLA, very much.